Unfortunately, this weekend we have heard the news of the sad death of women's wrestling legend, the Fabulous Moolah. Do you have any memories about her? Maybe a funny story to tell?
No, like her and May always would come sporadically from time to time, and Moolah was a very nice lady to me. I didn't really have a lot of experiences with her, but whenever I saw her, I always made sure to say hi, and she always wanted to get a kiss and a hug and talk about how handsome I was. She was right, I'm a sexy beast. But yeah, she was really cool. I think it's one of those things that people in the modern era just know her for being, the wacky sidekick to Mae Young, or the wacky old lady that came, and, because Mae, but don't really realize, in the history of the sport, she's the most influential and biggest women's wrestler of all time, and was for 30 or 40 years. I mean, she ran the entire women's wrestling operation from the 50s all the way to the 80s, and I think it's one of the things that there's so many modern fans that have just kind of jumped on board over the last few years, but there's a huge history to Moolah, and I'd like to read a real story about her, about all the things that she did and went through, and I'm sure there's a lot of devious things because she was in charge of the entire wrestling world for women for many years. In the 50s and 60s, women's wrestling was much more prominent than it is nowadays. There was much more of a serious thing than just a bunch of, stripper chicks getting in the ring and rolling around and thinking they could wrestle. I mean, these girls were actually fighting and actually working, in some cases having better matches than the guys, and drawing a lot of money too. So I think I'd like to hear some of those real true blue stories about Moolah. But nice lady, and I'm glad she was involved in the business until the end. And it's something I think Vince was very, very adamant about, that she would always be involved at one point or another because he respected what she did.
Yes, I've been wondering this for a while now. How's Ralphus doing these days?
It's funny. I've been doing these. I've done like 12 days of autograph signings and appearances, and that by far gets asked. That and the Man of 1,000 Holds are the two questions that I get asked about the most. And it's so funny because I think to this day, if you asked Ralphus what happened, he just wouldn't know. He didn't have a clue what was going on. He didn't have a clue why he was where he was. And I haven't seen the guy in 10 years. I don't know what he's doing. All I know is that had WCW played their cards differently, as they could have with hundreds of guys, it seems, they could have made a huge star out of Ralphus. They could have been Ralphus dolls. They could have been Ralphus video games, Ralphus false teeth, Jericho personal security, Ralphus shirts. But they just decided not to, and I don't know, he's probably serving fries somewhere at a Burger King on Route 22.
You're still rocking with Fozzy, currently on tour around the world. How's the band been kicking, and how come you didn't make a stop here in Montreal this time around?
First of all, I'm always rocking. Second of all, well, we did make the stop in Montreal because that time you saw us in November was kind of the All Their Enemies World Tour that went all the way through 2004, 2005, and into mid-2006. So we were actually there. It just that what happened after that is we went over to the UK, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. We had just come back from Australia. We found a really big fan base over there, especially in the UK. So we toured there 5 times after I saw you in Montreal, and we did really good there. We kind of got a huge fan base going. So that was really cool. So now we're just kind of in the midst of working on some new stuff. I've written all the lyrics for it. Now we just have to get together and put it down and put some tunes together and go from there. So it's a long process, and it's just the very, very early stages right now.
Have you had the chance to follow either of the current products, whether it be WWE or TNA? What are your thoughts if you have a chance to check them out recently?
I like the fact that there's 2 companies going. It's fun to watch, and it's fun to see both companies. They both know. I mean, obviously TNA is the underdog, and they have a lot of growing pains. But the other side of the coin, they've been doing everything they wanted to do. They started on pay-per-view and moved to Fox Sports, and then went over to prime time on Spike, and then got a 2-hour show on Spike, and they've got some great talent working there, and it's fun. It's fun that there's a different place for fans and for wrestlers themselves to go. So and both shows have pros and cons, but it's good to know that there's that was one of the things that was great when I was a kid. There was a lot of different places to watch, and for me, I loved AWA because that's when I first started watching. Then I watched the WWF, and then when I saw Stampede, that's when I really knew that I could wrestle, and I wanted to wrestle. And I discussed it in my book when I first saw Owen Hart, because he wasn't a giant. He was so acrobatic and so amazing, and plus he was in Calgary a place that I knew about. You know, growing up in Winnipeg, I knew how to get to Calgary. I knew where Calgary was. I knew, you know, how to take a bus to get there. That was when really I decided that, you know, I think I could really be a wrestler. I think I could really do this, and it gave me a lot of inspiration when I first started watching Stampede. So there was a lot of different places to watch, and it's good that that's kind of going that way right now again too.
Theoretically, of course, let's say you were returning to the ring in the near future. Would we be seeing a new Chris Jericho? What would you hang on to from the past, and what would be different when it comes to your moveset, persona, whatever?
I've always changed things up. I mean, over the years, I love the fact that I had so many different looks and so many different moves that I could draw back on. And you know, the moveset is because I spent so much time over in these different countries and trained in Calgary and worked in Germany and worked in Japan and worked in Mexico and had all these different, you know, things I could draw back on. You know, I mentioned that in A Lion's Tale, Around the World in Spandex, available in fine bookstores near you, that I was, you know, very lucky that I had many different colors to paint my pictures with due to all the different experiences that I had. So I would always change things up. And look-wise, I mean, you're on TV 52 weeks out of the year. You got to be different, man. You can't look the same all the time. People get bored. So, I mean, it sounds kind of strange, but I always compare myself to, like, you know, like Madonna, for example, how she always has a different look and a different style. It's always her, but there's different variations of it. So basically, I'm saying I'm the Madonna of wrestling.
Well, you did cut your signature long blonde hair recently. I did notice that.
I just changed my wig. Yeah, I took off the long blonde hair wig and put on a different one. But that's all part of it. You know, it's one of those things. You change things up, you look different, but you still keep the things that brought you to the dance. And, you know, wrestling is show business for me. Number one, first and foremost, it's being entertaining, it's being a showman, it's being the party host, it's putting on an appearance that people remember. And part of that is changing things up and keeping it going. And I think it's easy to balance that. You take, you know, it's like when you go see AC/DC in concert. They play some new songs, but they play all the old hits that everyone loves, and that's, I think, the way that I always look at things, the way that a band does things. And, you know, Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden cut his hair, but that doesn't make him any less of an awesome majesty king rocker, and it's the same for Jericho.
We are speaking with the Ayatollah of rock and roll, or at least formerly known as that, Chris Jericho, here on the main event. And playing into that...
I'm always known as the Ayatollah of rock and roll. That never changes. Continue.
Well, playing into that name, I recently began marking out for the new, I don't know if it's new per se, but it's the Iron Sheik character that's been going on recently. And I don't know if you've seen the recent shoot interview that he had done with RF Video, but when they mentioned the fact that you were the Ayatollah of rock and roll, he freaked out and started accusing you of stealing his gimmick, and while then going into random expletives. But have you A, have you heard about that, and B, have you heard about his new character and your reaction to the Iron Sheik?
Well, it's quite obvious I've stolen everything I've ever done from the Iron Sheik, from the pointed boots to the Ayatollah to the bald head to the huge mustache and to the unintelligible promo. So yes, I have stolen everything from the Iron Sheik, and I will pay the Iron Sheik royalties as a result. So I mean, that's just obvious. And as far as the new character, that's the old character. That's the Iron Sheik that has been around for 20, 30 years, and it's very funny, but it's also sad because it's a train wreck waiting to happen, and there's a reason why he talks that way, and it's just sad to see, you know, no one's going to step in and help him. They just think it's funny to listen to him make a fool of himself and to be in a completely drug-induced, drunken haze. And, you know, it is funny, but it's also sad. It'd be nice if someone would just take him aside and try and help him out in some way. But that won't happen. So, you know, it's one of those things. God bless him.
All right, Chris, thanks a lot for being on the show today. We'd love to have you on again anytime. A Lion's Tale Around the World in Spandex is available now at bookstores everywhere as well as online. I would recommend it to all wrestling fans. Thanks a lot for coming on the program today, Chris. Any final words from yourself?
Yeah, I'm a sexy beast, and things are cool, and continue to watch, and at some point you will see many tricks and secrets